The noose bites hard. Wood strains against rope. Pinocchio's feet lift off the frozen earth, and the night swallows every desperate kick. The cold wind carries only the low creak of a small wooden body turning beneath an ancient oak. Two assassins stand below him, faces hidden behind wet charcoal sacks. Their breath fogs through ragged eye slits as they watch the puppet struggle. "How long?" one whispers. "Count the kicks," the other replies. The kicks slow. 7, 4, 2, then none. Pinocchio's carved mouth opens and closes, trying to pull in a breath that will never come. His painted eyes strain wide, reflecting nothing but the darkness closing over him. As the rope tightens, he thinks of one thing only: his father. The old man who sold his winter coat so his puppet son could hold a spelling book he would later sell for a theater ticket. His legs stop moving. His wooden hands fall limp at his sides. His head drops forward, chin to chest. The assassins wait a heartbeat longer, making certain the body is still. Then they turn and disappear into the forest, leaving the puppet to swing alone in the winter wind. October 1881. Florence. Italian children unfolded Giornale per I Bambini at breakfast and read this exact scene. At the bottom of the page, Carlo Collodi wrote a single word: "Fine." The end. The puppet was meant to stay dead. The moral was complete. Disobedience leads to death. A child who refuses to learn becomes nothing but wood to be cut down. This is the Pandora's Project. Tonight we reopen the sealed chapters Collodi left behind. The rope is still there. The corpse never vanished. If you want the truth unfiltered, not the version with songs and wishes, then stay with me until the final chapter. Every minute reveals another detail the world buried. Like this video if the hanging shattered your memory of Pinocchio. Subscribe to the Pandora's Project if you want the next sealed archive opened, because the deeper we go, the darker these stories become. The archive opens now. Part 1. The Lie You Know. Most people carry a memory of Pinocchio that feels warm. A workshop glowing with lamplight. A kindly old woodcarver shaping a puppet while a music box turns in the background. A blue light descending through an open window. A star shimmering overhead, promising that goodness will be rewarded if you only believe hard enough. In that memory, the puppet wakes gently. He giggles. He dances. He is naive but harmless, always learning, always forgiven. A small cricket hops onto a wooden beam and becomes the voice of reason, patient and polite. The boy lies now and then, but the punishment is soft. A nose stretching in comic exaggeration, a joke for children. Nothing breaks. Nothing bleeds. The puppet wanders into adventure. He disobeys, but only a little. He is swallowed by a friendly whale who never truly means harm. He finds his father, learns bravery, and earns his humanity. The ending wraps itself around the heart like a blanket. Magic solves everything. Love redeems everything. Suffering is temporary, and innocence is always restored. That is the memory millions grew up with. A story of faith rewarded. A promise that no matter what mistakes you make, someone will save you before the world becomes dangerous. But that memory is a construction. A carefully repainted mask placed over something older, sharper, and far more unsettling. Because in the original 1881 story, Pinocchio does not begin in candlelight or kindness. He begins with a scream, and Italian children read that scream at breakfast. Part 2. The Creation. Creation in Collodi's world does not begin with wonder. It begins with dread. A simple log lay on Master Antonio's workbench, the kind any family might burn to warm a winter room. He lifted his axe, ready to shape it like he had shaped wood for 50 years. Before steel touched bark, a small voice came from inside the grain. "Don't strike me so hard." The axe slipped from his fingers. The shop was empty. No children hiding. No trick. Just the log. He reached for the axe again, hands trembling, and the voice returned, sharper, pained. "Stop! You're hurting me." Master Antonio stumbled back. Wood did not feel pain. Wood did not beg. Whatever this was, he wanted it out of his home immediately. A knock broke the silence. Geppetto entered, wearing his crooked yellow wig and that same stubborn, hungry hope he always carried. He asked for a piece of wood to carve a puppet that might dance, fence, and earn him a little bread and wine. Antonio handed him the cursed log before he even finished speaking. When the door closed behind the old man, Antonio whispered a prayer for him. He sensed nothing good would come from that block of wood. Geppetto's home was a single dim room, a broken chair, a rickety table, a painted fireplace with painted flames and painted steam pretending to warm the air. Poverty had peeled the house down to shadows, but hope still flickered when Geppetto lit his candle and placed the log on his workbench. He began to carve as if giving shape to a dream. When he carved the hair, it shifted on the wooden scalp like something alive. When he carved the eyes, they snapped open and fixed on him with a stare far too aware for a newborn creation. The nose began to grow the instant he touched it with his knife. The mouth, once shaped, curled into a smile and released a low, mocking laugh. When he carved the hands, they grabbed the wig off his head. When he carved the feet, one kicked him straight in the nose, and then the puppet stood on its own legs, complete and grinning with a cold wooden smile that already understood mischief better than innocence. "I'll call you Pinocchio," Geppetto said, rubbing his bruised face. The puppet's grin widened. He ran straight out the door into the street. Geppetto chased him, shouting for someone to stop the runaway puppet. A policeman saw only an old man screaming at what looked like a terrified child. He arrested Geppetto on the spot while Pinocchio wandered home, untouched and unbothered. His father was dragged away because of him, and he felt nothing. He had discovered a truth far too early. Adults suffer for children, not the other way around. The house was silent when he returned. Silent, except for a faint creaking sound near the ceiling. A cricket perched on the wall. "I have lived here more than 100 years, it said. Pinocchio glared at it. He was not interested in lectures. Still, the cricket attempted one. It spoke of disobedient children, of wasted education, of futures that ended in misery for those who refused to learn. It barely finished before Pinocchio grabbed a wooden mallet and hurled it across the room. The insect hit the wall, slid downward, and did not move again. A century of wisdom silenced because the wooden boy found the truth inconvenient. Hunger sent him begging from door to door. The villagers slammed their shutters. One man threw a bucket of icy water over him. Frozen and miserable, Pinocchio returned home, sat too close to a brazier, and fell asleep. Morning revealed only charred black stumps where his feet had been. Geppetto returned from prison to find a footless puppet sobbing in the ashes. Any other man might have shouted or struck him, or simply walked away. Instead, Geppetto knelt and gathered him gently, as though he were flesh instead of carved wood. He carved new feet with hands that shook from exhaustion. He gave Pinocchio his own breakfast, 3 pairs he had saved for himself. And when his creation said he wanted to go to school and become good, Geppetto believed him. The next morning he sold his coat to buy a spelling book. Winter air bit through his thin shirt, but he handed the book to Pinocchio with a smile, proud of the boy he hoped to raise. Pinocchio nodded solemnly, tucked the book under his arm, and walked toward school. But hope is fragile in Collodi's world. As Pinocchio walked, he heard trumpets and drums drifting across the road. A puppet theater stood at the end of the lane. Laughter spilled from its doors. Pinocchio stared at the book in his hands. It felt heavier than it had moments before. He whispered to himself that one day would not matter, that school could wait until tomorrow. He sold the book for 2 pennies. He bought a ticket. He stepped into the theater. And inside that glowing room waited a giant with a beard that swept the floor. A man who used puppets as firewood. A man who would change Pinocchio's fate with 5 gold coins. Coins that would lead him into a dark forest. Coins that would bring assassins to his heels. Coins that would one day fall from his mouth as his body hung lifeless from an oak tree. Creation was only the beginning. The story would not wait for him to understand it. Part 3. The Hanging. There is no Jiminy Cricket guiding Pinocchio. That conscience is already dead. Pinocchio killed him with a hammer on page 12. The world Collodi created does not wait for innocence to grow. It punishes immediately. Inside the puppet theater, marionettes danced on strings, laughing in wooden voices. When they spotted Pinocchio in the crowd, they froze mid-pose as if seeing a long-lost brother. They waved him forward. He climbed onto the stage. The audience booed at the disruption. Then the curtains shook as Fire Eater emerged. He filled the doorway. His beard dragged across the floor. His eyes glowed like coals. When he inhaled, the room trembled. Who interrupted my show? The puppets pointed at Pinocchio without hesitation. Fire Eater studied him. The flames from the kitchen licked the walls behind him. The fire is low. I need wood for my mutton. You will burn nicely. 2 puppets seized Pinocchio's arms and dragged him toward the glowing oven. The heat on his face was already unbearable. Please, he cried. I don't want to die. Fire Eater paused. Why are you crying? Because I want to see my father again. The line broke something inside the giant. His shoulders shook. Fire Eater sneezed, a tremendous, explosive sneeze that signaled his heart softening. Damn it, he muttered. I feel sorry for the old man. He waved his hand. Release him. Pinocchio collapsed with relief. Fire Eater handed him 5 gold coins. Give these to your father. Buy him a new coat. Pinocchio left the theater at sunset, coins clutched in his wooden fist. He did not walk long before 2 figures joined him. A fox limped on a crutch. A cat tapped the ground with a stick, pretending to be blind. Good evening, Pinocchio, said the fox. We heard Fire Eater rewarded you. What will you do with such fortune? Buy my father a new coat. A noble plan, the fox purred. But why stop at a coat? Those 5 coins could become 1,000. Pinocchio slowed. How? The field of miracles, the fox whispered. Plant your coins tonight. Water them. By morning, a tree of gold. Every instinct should have warned him. But he imagined buying not just a coat, but comfort, food, warmth, a better life. Show me. Before they reached the field, a pale light appeared. A small, glowing figure drifted above the road. The cricket's voice echoed. Don't you recognize me, Pinocchio? But I killed you. Yes, and now I am a ghost. These 2 are thieves. Go home. Give the money to your father. Pinocchio felt anger rise. I don't believe in ghosts. The ghost dimmed, sorrowful. Then you will learn the hard way. It vanished. At the inn that night, the fox and cat devoured a feast paid entirely by Pinocchio's coins. When dawn broke, they were gone. The innkeeper shook Pinocchio awake. Your friends left. They said you'd settle the bill. 1 coin gone. Pinocchio walked alone into the forest. 2 shadowed figures stepped onto the path. They wore black sacks over their faces. Hand over your money. I don't have any. Pinocchio hid the remaining coins in his mouth. They searched him and found nothing. One grabbed his throat. Open your mouth. Pinocchio clenched his jaw. A knife flashed. Open it or I'll cut it open. Pinocchio bit down with wooden teeth. A severed hand thudded to the dirt. Not a human hand. A cat's paw. The assassins roared. The deception was over. The fox and cat had followed him, waited for the perfect moment, and struck. After him, the cat screamed. Kill him. Pinocchio ran. Branches whipped at him. Roots clutched his feet. His wooden heart hammered. Ahead was a faint glow, a white house with a single window lit. He pounded on the door. Help, please. A girl appeared behind the glass. Hair dark as midnight. Skin pale as moonlight. Eyes closed. She looked like she had never breathed. She looked like she had already been buried. Let me in, Pinocchio begged. Assassins are chasing me. Her voice drifted through the window. I cannot help you. Why not? Because I am dead. Everyone in this house is dead. I am waiting for my coffin. She closed the window. The light went out. The forest exhaled a cold breath. The assassins stepped from the trees. They dragged him toward a massive oak, its branches twisted like skeletal arms. They bound a rope, tightened a noose, and forced it over his head. We'll kill him now and cut his belly open later, one muttered. The coins will still be there when his body softens. Pinocchio thought of Geppetto, alone in the small painted house. Thought of promises broken, warnings ignored, the cricket's ghost, his father's thin shirt, his father's bare shoulders in winter. He whispered, I'm sorry. It was the only moment of honesty he had ever spoken. The assassins pulled the rope. His feet left the ground. The world narrowed to a tight, burning circle around his neck. His wooden legs kicked once, twice, slower. His painted eyes bulged. His hands fell slack. His head dropped forward. The puppet who had lived only days hung lifeless in the winter wind. Collodi ended the chapter with a single word. Fine. The end. That was supposed to be the conclusion. A warning carved into literature. Disobedience leads to death. Children must learn through suffering. Pinocchio was meant to remain on that tree forever. But readers revolted. Children wrote letters. Parents complained. The editor begged Collodi to continue the story. For months he refused. Then, 4 months later, he opened his manuscript again. And the first image he wrote was chillingly familiar. The dead girl from the window, still standing there, still watching the tree where he hung, as if she had never moved. She was not a fairy godmother. She was not alive. She was something stranger, something that died and rose and died again, something Collodi never explained. Something waiting for Pinocchio to open his eyes again, yet not as a puppet, not as a boy, but as whatever the story required him to become. Part 4. The Fairy. The blue fairy in Disney glows with warmth and mercy. In Collodi's world, she first appears as a corpse. When Pinocchio begged at her window, she told him, I'm dead. Everyone in this house is dead. I'm waiting for my coffin. She closed the shutters while assassins dragged the puppet to an oak tree and left him hanging. But she was not dead. Not truly. She was an ancient spirit that watched over that forest, something older than magic and stranger than mercy. When Pinocchio's wooden body finally went still, she summoned a falcon and whispered, Cut him down. The bird severed the rope with a single strike. Pinocchio dropped like a broken marionette. A poodle coachman carried him to her house, and the fairy summoned 3 doctors, a crow, an owl, and the ghost of the talking cricket. Collodi introduced her in 1882 as La Bella Bambina dai Capelli Turchini, the beautiful child with turquoise hair. Not sky blue. Turquoise. The color of oxidized copper. the color used in Victorian death photography to tint corpses so they appeared more lifelike. That choice of color gave her an uncanny, death-tinted presence that would have felt deeply unsettling. The doctors inspected his motionless body. "Is he alive or dead?" the fairy asked. The crow declared him dead. The owl insisted he lived. Only the ghost cricket spoke with certainty. "I knew this puppet when he lived. He is a rogue, a vagabond, a disobedient son who will make his father die of heartbreak." At that, Pinocchio burst into sudden sobs. The doctor stepped back. "He's alive. Dead puppets don't cry." She nursed him back to health in her silent, candlelit rooms. When Pinocchio was strong enough to sit up, she asked how he fell into the assassin's hands. He told the truth, except for the gold coins. "I lost them," he said. His nose lengthened. "In the forest." It grew longer still. Birds landed on it as though it were a branch. Pinocchio panicked. The fairy laughed softly. "There are lies with short legs and lies with long noses. Yours has a very long nose indeed." She summoned woodpeckers. 1,000 of them. Mille picchi. Italian children read the truth. Not some birds, but an army of sharp beaks that pecked his nose down to size. It was mutilation disguised as correction. A lesson enforced with pain while she watched calmly from her chair. When it was over, Pinocchio wept. "I want to become a real boy. Will you help me?" "You can," she said, "but you must deserve it. Go to school. Tell the truth. Obey. If you do, I will be your mother and you will be my son." Pinocchio embraced her. For a moment he believed he could become good. The fairy knew better. She sent for Geppetto, telling Pinocchio he would arrive the next day. Overjoyed, he ran to invite his friends, only to encounter the fox and the cat again. The cat's paw was bandaged where Pinocchio had bitten it off, yet they still whispered about the field of miracles, and Pinocchio still believed them. He planted his gold coins in the dirt and waited for a golden tree to grow. While he sat dreaming of riches, the swindlers dug the coins up behind him and fled. Pinocchio stared at the barren field in disbelief, the earth flat and undisturbed. Nothing grew there. Nothing ever would. Hungry and desperate, he climbed into a vineyard for grapes and fell into a trap. The furious farmer clamped a bronze collar around his neck and chained him like a dog. Collodi described the collar exactly like Roman slave collars preserved in Italian museums. Pinocchio was not being punished. He was being enslaved. He worked through the night pulling a chained cart, howling like a beast until the farmer decided he wasn't worth the trouble and let him go. When Pinocchio finally reached the fairy's house, he found only a small gravestone. The beautiful child with turquoise hair had died. Again. In the 1881 serial, she appears 3 times and dies 3 times. Collodi revived her without explanation every time. She existed between life and death, something the story could not contain and the author refused to define. This time she died because she missed her little brother. Pinocchio, grief-stricken, learned from a dove that Geppetto was building a small boat to search for him. Pinocchio ran to the shore. He arrived just in time to see his father's boat swallowed whole by a monstrous sea creature. The boy threw himself into the water and swam through the night until exhaustion dragged him under. He washed up on the island of busy bees, where no one tolerated laziness. He grew hungry. He refused to work. He begged. No one helped. Until he met a woman who resembled the fairy, older now, grown, impossibly alive. She offered him water and watched him with familiar disappointment. Yes, it was her. Resurrected again. This time she took the role of his mother not out of affection but expectation. Pinocchio confessed his dream of becoming a real boy. She told him it was possible, but only after 1 year of obedience, work, and truth. 1 year without lies, 1 year without running away. He tried. He attended school. He became the best student in his class. Other boys envied him. One day he accidentally injured a classmate in a fight and had to flee from the police, but he returned to his lessons the next morning. The fairy counted every day. 1 year of goodness. 1 year until transformation. His reward was scheduled for the next morning. But the evening before, he met Candlewick. Candlewick whispered about a place with no school, no teachers, no work. A paradise called the Land of Toys. A place where children played forever. A place where consequences did not exist. Pinocchio hesitated. A full year of obedience had almost changed him. But Candlewick smiled, and the promise of freedom pulled him off the path Collodi built for him. What waited in the Land of Toys was not freedom. It was the most terrifying punishment Collodi ever imagined. A punishment where a human mind remained trapped in an animal's body, screaming behind silent eyes. The fate of real Italian children who refused education. The fate Collodi wanted to carve into memory. The fairy had offered him transformation. Instead, he chose the road that would transform him into something far worse. Part 5. The Donkey. There is no pleasure island in Collodi's world. There is the Land of Toys, a place where every boy who enters transforms into a donkey. Their minds remain human. Their bodies do not. And they are sold, worked, and discarded like livestock. Candlewick described it to Pinocchio with shining eyes. The most wonderful country in the world. No schools, no teachers, no books. You play from morning to night. Every day is Saturday. Pinocchio hesitated. He thought of his father, the fairy, the promise of becoming human. Candlewick pressed harder. A coach comes at midnight. I'm going. Come with me. Pinocchio whispered the lie he needed to hear. Just for a little while. Midnight came. The coach arrived, pulled by 12 pairs of small donkeys. They wore tiny boots. Their eyes were wet. They were crying. Collodi wrote the detail plainly, little donkeys with boots, and those donkeys wept. Italian children understood the warning long before Pinocchio did. Those were not beasts. They were boys returning from the Land of Toys, transformed and broken. Pinocchio climbed aboard with Candlewick and 100 other children. The coach rattled through the night until dawn broke over a strange, glittering town. The Land of Toys was chaos-made paradise. Streets swarmed with children playing games, shouting, laughing, breaking anything they pleased. No adults. No rules. No work. 5 months passed in a blur of endless holiday. 5 months without consequences. Pinocchio had never been happier. One morning he woke with a strange itch in his ears. He scratched. Gray fur brushed his fingers. His ears had grown, longer, heavier, unmistakably donkey-like. He ran to Candlewick and saw the other boy wearing a cap pulled low, hiding the same shame. "Show me your ears," Pinocchio said. "You first." They lifted their caps. 2 pairs of long, furry ears stared back. Candlewick laughed. Pinocchio laughed too. But the laughter twisted into something higher, stranger. Hee-haw, hee-haw. They tried to stop. They could not. The sound ripped from their throats. Candlewick fell forward. His hands were no longer hands. Hooves struck the floor. His face pushed outward into a muzzle. Fur spread down his neck and across his body. A tail tore through his spine. He tried to scream. Only hee-haw came out. Pinocchio felt the same transformation seize him. His fingers hardened into hooves. His legs bent backwards. His jaw stretched. His ears lengthened. Fur covered him. His voice became the bray of an animal. Within minutes it was over. Two donkeys stood where two boys had been. Their human minds remained fully awake, trapped behind animal eyes, unable to speak, unable to plead. This was the true horror. They knew exactly what they had become. A door opened. The coachman entered, smiling. Well, well, two more donkeys for my collection. He examined them like produce at a market. Every boy becomes a donkey eventually. I bring them in as children. I sell them as beasts. Very profitable. Through the open door, Pinocchio saw rows of donkeys being led away by farmers, circus owners, mill workers. The coachman tapped their heads with the butt of his whip. The donkeys who pulled your coach? Boys, too. Once. Now they work until they die. Collodi wrote this as fact. In 1881 Florence, textile mills employed thousands of children. Their backs bent under loads. Their lungs scarred. Many never lived to adulthood. Donkey transformation was not fantasy. It was camouflage for child labor. The coachman cracked his whip. Move. Pinocchio was brushed, combed, and taken to market. A circus master checked his teeth, legs, and hooves. Strong, he said. He'll perform well. Money changed hands. Pinocchio was no longer a boy or a puppet. He was property. The circus master trained him without pity. Whips for mistakes. Starvation for disobedience. Pinocchio learned to dance on his hind legs, bow to the audience, and jump through hoops. Night after night, crowds roared with laughter, unaware a screaming child was trapped inside the animal on stage. One evening, while bowing clumsily in the ring, he saw her, a woman with blue hair sitting silently in the audience, the fairy. She watched the struggling donkey with an expression too heavy for pity. He tried to call to her, to beg for help. Hee-haw. The audience laughed. The fairy lifted her hand. A golden collar appeared around his neck. Inscribed on it were the words, "This is the puppet Pinocchio who became a donkey." Then she vanished. The next night, during a jump, Pinocchio landed wrong. His leg snapped. The circus master looked at him coldly. Lame, he said. Useless. He sold him to a drum maker. The drum maker wasted no time. Donkey hide makes the best drums, he said. I'll drown you. Let the water soften your skin. Then I'll peel it off. He tied a stone around Pinocchio's neck and dragged him to the cliff above the sea. Nothing personal, he said. Just business. He pushed him over. Pinocchio plunged into the water. The stone dragged him downward. Salt water filled his throat. His thoughts grew dim. He thought of Geppetto, thought of promises broken, thought this must be the end. But the ocean stirred around him. Small shapes darted in the dark. Fish, hundreds of them. They swarmed the donkey's body, tearing at fur and hide, stripping away the animal form piece by piece until the wooden puppet underneath was revealed again. Pinocchio was freed from the stone, freed from the donkey body, freed, but not safe. Something massive moved in the deep, something with teeth longer than a man's body, something that had swallowed his father 2 years ago. The darkness beneath him opened wide, and Pinocchio did not yet know that the worst punishment was still waiting for him. Part 6. The Fish. Disney gives us a whale named Monstro. Collodi gives us something far worse. The terrible Dogfish. A creature so vast it swallows ships, entire crews, and anyone unlucky enough to cross its shadow. And Geppetto has been inside it for 2 years. Not days, not weeks, 2 full years. Alone, surviving in darkness. The ocean closed over Pinocchio as the stone dragged him downward. The water grew colder. His donkey lungs collapsed. His vision dimmed. Then movement stirred around him. Hundreds of small shapes cutting through the dark. Fish. They swarmed him with frantic hunger. They tore at the donkey hide. They stripped the fur, the hooves, the animal skin that had trapped him. Layer after layer vanished until only the wooden puppet remained. A puppet, strangely alive, freed from the weight pulling him down. He slipped the rope. The stone fell away. Pinocchio shot upward through the black water. He burst through the surface, gasping with shock, laughing with relief. Above him, far on the cliff, the drum maker screamed at the impossible miracle. "My donkey hide! Come back!" Pinocchio swam hard in the opposite direction, leaving the man and the nightmare behind. Hours passed. The shoreline shrank until it was only a thin memory on the horizon. The ocean stretched empty around him, wide and merciless. He kept swimming, wooden arms slicing through the water, until he felt something change. A shadow rose beneath him, slow and massive, too large to be a rock, too deliberate to be a wave. Pinocchio looked down and saw a mouth larger than a house. Inside were 4 rows of teeth, each one as long as his body. The jaws opened wide. The sea around him tilted. Escape was impossible. The monster swallowed him in a single breath. Darkness consumed everything. He slid through a long, wet tunnel, tumbling helplessly until he landed on something soft and reeking. He lay still, hardly daring to breathe. He was inside the Dogfish. The air was thick with rot. The stomach walls pulsed gently. Faint waves of decay drifted through the cavernous chamber. He could hear distant water dripping. He could feel something shifting in the dark. Bones, bits of wreckage, things swallowed and forgotten, things that had never escaped. Pinocchio should have been terrified. Instead, he noticed something impossible. Far away, in the dense blackness, a point of light glimmered. A candle. Someone was alive in here. He stepped carefully across the slick floor. The shadows moved around him, twisting into shapes that looked too much like broken masts, shattered barrels, the ribs of ships long dead. As he moved forward, the faint glow grew brighter. He saw a battered table, a chair, a single candle burning low, and next to it, thin and frail and pale as moonlight, sat an old man with a white beard. "Father." Geppetto lifted his head. His eyes widened. His candle shook. He whispered, "Pinocchio, is that you?" Pinocchio ran to him and threw his arms around him. For the first time in his life, he felt a love so sharp it hurt. 2 years alone had thinned the old man to almost nothing. 2 years waiting for a son who would never come. 2 years under the belly of a beast. "How long have you been here?" Pinocchio asked. 2 years, Geppetto said quietly. "I sailed looking for you. The monster swallowed my boat. I've survived on raw fish since then." He smiled faintly. "You're here now. That's all that matters." Pinocchio could not speak. He could only whisper, "I'm so sorry. For everything." But apologies would not save them. They needed a way out. The Dogfish had asthma. When it slept, it breathed through its mouth. If they waited for the right moment, they could walk straight out of its jaws. That night the Dogfish began to snore. The entire stomach shook with each breath. Pinocchio helped Geppetto stand. They climbed the slick walls of the throat, step by trembling step, gripping folds of flesh that pulsed beneath their fingers. They reached the mouth. The monster floated near the surface, mouth wide in its sleep. Beyond its teeth lay the open night. Pinocchio guided his father onto the enormous tongue. They slipped down its curve and lowered themselves into the water. Geppetto coughed weakly. "I can't swim. I'm too old." "Hold on to my shoulders," Pinocchio said. "I'll swim for both of us." He paddled through the black water with all the strength he had, but they were too heavy, too slow. A shadow moved beside them. A tuna. Massive, calm, powerful. "I'll help," the tuna said gently. "Climb on." They clung to its back as the great fish carried them through the waves. Hours later, it brought them to a quiet shoreline. They collapsed on the sand, alive, free. Geppetto could barely walk. His body was failing after 2 years in darkness. Pinocchio found an abandoned hut and laid him gently on a straw bed. He covered him with his own jacket. "I'll take care of you," he said. "I'll make everything right." And he meant it. He found work carrying water for a farmer. Hard labor from dawn to night. Every coin he earned went to Geppetto. When the farmer finally dismissed him, he wove baskets in the evenings to earn extra money. He never complained. Not once. Weeks passed. Then months. Geppetto recovered little by little. Pinocchio saved 40 coins, enough to buy himself new clothes at last. But the fairy's servant found him, the snail, and she brought terrible news. The fairy was dying. She needed medicine. Medicine that cost exactly 40 coins. Pinocchio looked at the money. Everything he had earned. Everything he had hoped for. Months of work carved into cold, silver circles. He did not hesitate. He gave it all away. And that night, something happened that would end the puppet forever and wake someone else in his place. Part 7. The Transformation. In Disney's version, everything resolves with a single heroic act. A wand flashes. A wish is granted. The puppet becomes a boy because he finally behaved. Collodi's ending is nothing like that. In the original serial, becoming human is not a reward. It is a death. And it begins the night Pinocchio gives away everything he owns. He had worked for months to save 40 coins. Long days of carrying water, long nights of weaving baskets. Every bruise, every ache, every blister had gone into earning them. He planned to buy clothes. Something warm. Something his father could be proud of. Then the snail arrived with news. The fairy was dying. She needed money for medicine. Money no one else could provide. Pinocchio didn't argue. Didn't negotiate. He placed all 40 coins into the snail's hands. Months of labor. Gone in an instant. For the first time in his life, he had chosen someone else over himself. That night he dreamed. The fairy stood beside his bed, her face lit by a pale, impossible glow. She bent over him and pressed her lips to his carved wooden cheek. She whispered that he had worked, suffered, and given without expecting anything in return. She forgave him. And tomorrow, she said, he would receive his reward. Collodi wrote that moment as un bacio, a kiss. But in Catholic imagery, the kiss is not sweetness. It is release. It is passage. It is death. The fairy didn't transform him with magic. She ended something. Quietly. Gently. Without ceremony. And the puppet who had caused so much pain simply ceased to be. When Pinocchio awoke, he felt it immediately. Something in the light was different, warmer against his skin. Skin. He looked down and saw hands not carved from pine, but soft and pink and human. He touched his face. No grain, no varnish, just warmth. He staggered to a mirror. The creature staring back was not a puppet. It was a boy. He shouted for Geppetto. The old man appeared, trembling, then burst into tears at the sight of the child he had spent years imagining. They embraced, overwhelmed, finally whole after so many disasters and separations. For a moment, it looked like the ending everyone remembers. A miracle. A gift. a fairy tale. Then Pinocchio saw it. In the corner of the room, slumped against a chair like discarded laundry, lay his old wooden body. The puppet face stared upward with painted, empty eyes. The joints were stiff. The limbs collapsed. It looked exactly like what it was, a corpse. He walked toward it slowly, as if approaching the scene of a crime. In Collodi's 1883 edition, the author added this moment deliberately. It was not in the original serial. He wanted children to see what Pinocchio saw. He wanted the new boy to confront the dead puppet. He wanted the transformation to feel earned and to feel horrifying. Pinocchio looked down at his former face and whispered, "Che burattino ridicolo che ero." What a ridiculous puppet I was. In Italian, burattino is not just a puppet. It is a puppet with strings, something controlled, something manipulated, something without agency or dignity. He was looking at the version of himself Collodi believed children needed to abandon, and he was expected to feel shame. He did. He said softly, "How glad I am to have become a real boy." But the corpse did not vanish. It stayed in the room, stiff and lifeless, watching nothing. A reminder of what he had been. A reminder of who had to die so he could be reborn. A reminder that becoming human, in Collodi's world, came with a price: obedience, work, suffering, and finally the burial of the childish self. Outside, sunlight poured in. Geppetto was alive. The fairy had left money. The transformation was complete. But the wooden body remained. Not magic, not joy, not wishes or stars. A corpse in the corner, staring at the boy who replaced it. A warning about what happens when society decides you are finally ready to be human. Final part. The breaking seals. The wooden corpse in Collodi's final scene is not the end of the story. It is the key to understanding everything he wrote. It sits in the corner, silent and empty, long after the boy walks away. And that is exactly how Collodi wanted it. A reminder of what childhood once meant in Italy. A reminder adults thought children were wild creatures who had to be broken before they could be trusted. A reminder that fear and pain were seen as the only tools capable of shaping a future citizen. That body tells us something darker than any Disney version ever dared to show. The original Pinocchio was not a fantasy. It was instruction. It was a manual. A warning carved into fiction for children who were already working in factories, already living in poverty, already watching their friends vanish into mills and mines and never return. The donkey stalls, the hanging tree, the burning brazier, the terror in the puppet theater. These weren't just spooky set pieces. They echoed the world Collodi saw around him. For a century, editors, teachers, and animators softened the edges. They replaced cruelty with courage, starvation with wishes, death with blue sparkles. They hid the corpse in the corner. They hid the message Collodi carved into every chapter. Become obedient, become useful, or be consumed. And the world let that message fade because it was easier to pretend childhood had always been gentle. But the puppet remains. The body in the corner remains. And if you look closely, the truth has never left. Pinocchio was shaped by violence, corrected by fear, transformed by sacrifice, and reborn only when he surrendered everything he had. That story still sits beneath the modern one like a shadow that refuses to lift. Here, on the Pandora's project, we pull those shadows back into the light. Every episode, we unseal another forgotten version, another buried truth. Another story the world decided was too disturbing for children, too real for bedtime, too honest for fairy tales. If you made it to this final chamber, you already sense what Collodi was doing. And if you stayed, it means you are ready for the next archive. Like this video if you want the darkness unfiltered. Subscribe if you want the sealed chapters opened one by one. And tell me in the comments which part of the original Pinocchio still lingers with you now that you've seen it without the varnish. This tomb is closing, but the seals never hold for long. See you in the next tomb.